Hello engineers, in this video I will explain how you can create a build pipeline and trigger this through an Azure DevOps API service. In order to do that, you should first have a Microsoft account that with which you can log in on Azure DevOps platform provided by Microsoft. This platform is free of charge for particular functionalities and provides free build agents for anyone to use. So we can go and use this service free of charge and create, build, and release pipeline for our organization and for our projects. So I have already logged in this service, and as you can see, I have already created my own organization, which is called GE Alexiou. So if you don't have an organization already created, then the first thing that Azure DevOps Service will ask you is to create one. Let's go now and create the project, which I will call for the purposes of this demo test project. In a real case scenario, you should give a more descriptive project name. The visibility which I will select will be private, as I don't want this project to be available from anyone. You can go also and select the version control of this particular project. The default selection is Git version control, but you can also select Team Foundation version control. I will go with the defaults and create this project with Git version control as it's more suitable for me. So I will then press create the project, and you can see now that we have some menus on the left, right, or the left side of the screen, which are the boards, the repositories, the pipelines, artifacts, etc. In order to build my pipeline, I will go and create an empty repository first. Navigate to Repos menu and press the category Files. There you can locate the Initiate Repository button, which will create and fill an empty repository on Azure DevOps repositories here with a README file. I will use this README on a later stage in order to trigger my build pipeline. The next step is to create a pipeline that we want to trigger through Azure DevOps REST API. So in order to do that, I will navigate on the Pipelines menu and create a new pipeline. The Initiate dialog asks you to select where the YAML, where the code is located. So as I don't currently have one pipeline, I will press Azure Repos Git, and I will select the test repository that I created on the previous step. The repository that I created inherits the name from the project. That's why you see the same name for the repository. But don't confuse, there are two different things. Test project is your project name, but the default repository that's created under it, it's also called with the same name, test project. We can then go and add more repositories on the same project with different names. So now I will select test project, and I will then select the starter pipeline template, as I don't want an existing pipeline or the templates that are available that you can find here. There are many templates already provided for various languages and build tools, but I will skip them for now and use the starter pipeline. As you can see, an Azure Pipelines YAML is created and will be committed on our test repository on the root directory. Let's now go and edit the pipeline that we created. I will delete most of the default code and I will add some extra lines. My goal is to create a pipeline that will not be triggered from a repository change, CI. In order to avoid the repository to trigger the build pipeline, I will change the trigger to none, and I will also add the PR pull request none in the definition. The pull does not affect the functionality of this pipeline for the particular demo. As a result, I will leave the default Ubuntu latest image that you can see here. This will act as the build agent for this particular pipeline. It is located on a default agent pool that Azure DevOps provide, and it's free of charge for single builds. I will delete the two print sections that are defined in the default pipeline, and I will add my own in this step. As we have our pipeline empty, we will go now and append the parameters section that we want for this particular pipeline, and I will give it a name of input name. I will provide the input display name as to ask the owner and the person that will run the pipeline what is the input that I want from him to provide. And also I will add the type of this parameter that will be of type string. In our steps section, I will add a script task that will echo the name of this particular parameters dot input name from a REST API call. And I will also give a display name for this particular job as it's a best practice, in order to differentiate the tasks and know exactly what task is running at each time. So I will put as a display name print message from automatically created pipeline. I will now go and save my pipeline, which will reflect the changes on the YAML, and press the run button in order to run my pipeline. As you can see in the input dialog, we should enter a string parameter that asks for our name. I will place here Gerasimus and run this pipeline to see the result. So even if we go to the job that is currently running, we will see that Azure DevOps searches for an available agent in order to give this job. It initializes the job, then it checks out the source, the build source of this pipeline, which in this case is this particular repository, which we created on Azure DevOps repos. So it will go and check out this repository and will get also our definition of the YAML file, which is located there. The next step that will run will be the print message that we provided, and we can see now that it it's not correct because we didn't append the $sign in the place that it had to be. So we will go now and edit this pipeline to reflect the change, and we will run it again. I will go now and edit my build pipeline and remove the space between this input. So now if I run this pipeline, which I already had, we will see from the result that the output says Erasmus triggered successfully the build pipeline from the input that we provided. So now we will go and create a release pipeline that will trigger when the build pipeline is triggered. So from releases menu, I go to releases and create a new release. I will now select empty job and I will rename my state to release. I will add then the artifact, the build artifact, which currently is only test project. This is the build pipeline, which will trigger my release pipeline. In this Thunder icon, I will press this and I will enable continuous integration in order to have a CI flow on my release pipeline. The release pipeline will run on agent pool Azure DevOps, the shared resources that Microsoft provides. We can rename the display name. We can also add the specific agent that will run our job. For now, we don't want a particular release pipeline, so I will only add the step, a parcel step that prints an output like successfully triggered. So I will add the parcel step and I will add the text release triggered from build pipeline. I will go then and save my pipeline, my release pipeline, and I will also name this release from REST API. I will go save and I will go to check my releases. You can see that my release hasn't run already, but this will happen in the next steps as we will trigger this build pipeline from REST API. In order to interact with Azure Devops REST API, I will use Postman. You can download Postman from its web page and have the tool ready to perform your API calls. I have it already installed and we will use it for these purposes. I will then navigate to Azure DevOps REST API documentation and I will explore the options that are provided. I want to run my build pipeline. As a result, I will go in the pipeline section. Currently, I don't want, for the purposes of this demo, to go and explore another section. So I will go to pipelines and then from there I will select the runs as I want to run a build pipeline, and I will check the documentation for run pipeline. As you can see, in order to run a pipeline, you should have to use the post HTTP verb and provide some parameters on it, like your organization URL. In my case, my organization name is, as you can see here, GE Alexiou. Your project name, in my case, is test project, and some other options like pipeline ID and the version of the API. In the current time that this video is created, the latest version of the API, Azure DevOps REST API, is version 6.1 preview 1. So we will use the latest version. Some of the parameters also that are required, except from the organization and project names, is also the access token. This access token is necessary in order to authenticate with Azure DevOps and trigger this build pipeline. In order to do that, I will go on the right corner on my account and select personal access tokens. There you can create a personal access token which will be used for the purposes of authenticating with the Azure DevOps platform. I will go and create a new token. I will call it REST token in this particular organization, and I will leave the expiration to 30 days. As my demo is a test, I will give and authorize this REST token with full access on my pipelines. This is not a best practice, and in production environments, you should only select the permissions that are required for this custom token. So for now, I will use full access and I will create my pipeline and I will copy this key and I will use it later on Postman. We are now ready to go and use Postman to trigger our build pipeline. I will go now to get the URL and edit it accordingly with my settings. I will use the post HTTP verb as it's required from the Azure for this particular API, and I will edit my organization and project names. As we said, the organization in my case is called GAlexiu, and I will add it here, and also I will edit my project name, which is called test project. Then we will have to add here the pipeline ID, which can be found easily in the URL. So we will go to pipelines, select the pipeline, and find the definition ID, which is 1. So we will select 1 as the pipeline ID, as we have not created other pipelines currently, and we have the post section, the URL section ready. So if I go now and send this post request, I will get an error because currently I don't have authentication in place. Let's try this and we will see that we are not authorized to do this action. So we will go now and add the authorization, which in the case of Azure DevOps API through a PAT token is a basic authentication. We can leave username empty and we should paste the personal access token on the password. So if we go now and rerun our post API on Azure DevOps, we will see that we get a 400 error because we haven't provided a value on our parameter. As a result, we have to go and edit our body on our request and add also a parameter as we specified on our build pipeline that is triggered with a parameter, which is the name of the person that triggers the pipeline. We will check the documentation and see that in order to pass a parameter, we have to fill the template parameters object. So we will go again in the Postman and add the template parameter object. I will select the row and pass this value as a JSON. So I will put template parameters and provide my parameter name, which is input name, and also the value that I want this parameter to have. So now we are ready again to trigger the post API on our build pipeline. When we trigger this pipeline, we will get again an error because you can see that I provided a JSON as an input for my build pipeline, but I didn't specify that on our headers. So I will go and set the content type as application JSON. I will then trigger again my build pipeline, and we can see that we get an 200 response, which means that our pipeline should have started. As you can see, my build pipeline triggered through a REST API, which I did through the Postman tool. And as you can see, the build pipeline will successfully trigger the release pipeline as we have added the CI option on it. After some refresh button, you can see that release triggered also as it's connected through the build pipeline, and you can see from the logs that the release also successfully completed, and the job that we added was just a release pipeline triggered from build pipeline echo task. In conclusion, in this video, I explained how you can trigger and build and release pipeline through an Azure DevOps REST API and Postman tool. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, you can leave a comment below, press the like button, or do a subscribe on my channel.